Welcome into episode 101 of JD's Empire Sports Talk. This is going to be more of just a WBC preview. I know I mentioned I would do that last week. I'm going to do it for you guys because WBC starting Friday, early Friday morning, about 5 a.m. That will be, I believe, Japan and someone else, or Korea and someone else playing in that game. We're not going to do really the scheduling thing. We'll do more of what the format exactly looks like, what teams are in what pool, all those type of things, because that matters, obviously, because there's not every team from every pool can advance to the playoff round after you play, your first four games. But let's do that first. So the format. So there's Pool A, which consists of Canada, Colombia, Cuba, Panama, and Puerto Rico. Then Pool B, which is Brazil, Great Britain, Italy, Mexico, and the USA, of course. Pool C is Australia, Chinese Taipei, Czechia, Japan, and Korea. And then Pool D is Dominican Republic, Israel, Netherlands, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. So obviously, four pools of five teams, which makes 20 total teams in this whole thing. And then so every team is going to play a four pool play system. So everyone gets to play each other. And then after that, the top two teams from each pool advance to the playoffs. So Pool A and Pool B are on the same side. So the first place team from Pool A would play the second place team of Pool B, and the first place team of Pool B would play the second place team of Pool A. Whoever wins those two matchups, they move on to the next round. Whoever wins that, then they wind up, getting to the championship after they would win that they would win the quarterfinal, then they would play the semifinal against the winner of that other game. And then if they win that, they go to the championship, which is all once the quarterfinals happen. That and beyond is only one game and you're out. So, you don't have room for error here. And then the same thing on the other side in Pool C and Pool D. First place of Pool C would play second place of Pool D. Second place of Pool C would play first place of Pool D, and then obviously they would wind up meeting up in, the championship game if whoever gets to that point. But, we're going to go through this. We're going to do the key pitchers and key hitters. Most of them, I was able to find, three key pitchers and three key hitters of each team. Some none, just because they have no guys that have ever really played, any type of high level baseball. Yeah, they probably played in that respective country of, a good league, but nothing I can really, actually dig and find anything from that. And that was only a few teams, nothing crazy. Before we get it going, though, Pool C is probably the one I had the least familiarity on. There was a few teams I couldn't find anything, but two of those, and then one team I was only really recognized one, particular player in there out of their whole roster, and then the rest of them they should be, pretty good. But let's start with Pool A here. So we'll start with Canada. Canada has a few, notable pitchers. They're underrated. I think they're going to be a good team. I don't know how far they can make it. I'll get to my predictions later on, but I don't know how far they can make it. But they do have, some talent on this roster. And Jameson Taillon will probably be their ace, so he'll be one of their, their main pitchers. Cal Quantrill, of course, people who know him, and Michael Soroka. So Cal Quantrill and Soroka. Soroka, especially, he'll be a bullpen guy, probably, could be their closer. I don't know exactly what their bullpen is going to consist of, but Taillon will be their guy. And then, Quantrill can do both. We've seen him do both in the MLB. He can start and, come out of the pen in games. So he won't have a problem with that. Soroka has become a full-time reliever. But I think the damage they're going to do is going to be from their bats. I was going to say, come from their bats, and I think that's the case here. The Josh Naylor, obviously, we know what he can do when he's locked in and fully, ready to go. Tyler O'Neill, another guy. So those two guys, Naylor and O'Neill, they're not the most, contact, guys, but they can hit. I mean, they can hit for power too. So you never know. This is the type of lineup where they can be boom or bust. And then Otto Lopez. Otto Lopez probably going to be their leadoff hitter if I had to guess. He was great last year for the Marlins, just poking singles the other way, stealing second base, and then these bigger guys get up and they can knock them in and they can score some runs. But for Canada, if I had an overall preview on them, I just think that their pitching is gonna be okay, but they're going to be winning games from the hitting. If that lineup should be able to score, a decent amount of runs. Also coming from some of the other teams they're facing in their own respective pool, they should be able to score some runs off of them. Then the next team's Colombia. Not a lot of guys that are currently in the MLB, but they do have guys that have played there, and some other guys as well. But Jose Quintana will be their ace. He's been around. He's pitched for a ton of different teams in his career. He'll be steady. I believe he's with the Brewers now, so I think he'll be fine with that. And then Julio Teheran, a guy that has pitched, in professional baseball for a long, long time, so he knows how to get batters out. And then with their hitters, Donovan Solano, Gio Urshela and Harold Ramirez. So Gio Urshela is probably the most notable. Solano and Ramirez have played in the MLB, at some level. Solano definitely more than Ramirez, but I don't have too much faith in them. But Quintana, if he can get 2 starts maybe in the pool games, I don't think that'll be. I don't know if that's accurate or not, just because the scheduling is so close. But if he's able to get 2 starts out of that, then he can maybe will them their way out of that pool, which is going to be difficult, I think, for them. I think there's two heavy favorites in this pool, and then you look at the rest. And then for Cuba, they have a rough situation. Some of their guys weren't approved of playing and stuff like that, so they have no MLB pitchers or any pro pitchers that came to mind for me. And then the one hitter they do have is Yohan Moncada. So I'm not going to say they have no chance. I'm just not very familiar with the roster and anyone that they really had there. It doesn't mean they can't be good. Obviously, we know Japan, that most of their roster is from that league in Japan, which makes them so good that we don't really know until they step on this stage. And Cuba can maybe be one of those teams. And then Panama, so key pitchers, Logan Allen, very good pitcher. Obviously, he's going to eat innings from them and be a guy. Ariel Gerardo and Humberto Mejia. So those are going to be two of the bullpen guys. So the key is here, some of these teams you're going to get to, they have really good bullpen pieces, but the starting pitching is not the greatest. So I can see a lot of these teams kind of piecing the game, in like 3-inning segments. If we can get to the back end of our bullpen, leave us 4 innings for the back end of our bullpen, and we really need to win this game, that's what we're going to do. And maybe they're playing, Panama's playing, say, Canada, and they know right now we have this team on the ropes. We have 4 innings left in this game. Yeah, we do have a game tomorrow, but we have a much better chance of beating Canada than maybe Puerto Rico. Let's go for this win. Because I'm going to get to it, but I think Puerto Rico is a team that they're not the same Puerto Rico as have they been with the roster fully loaded, but they're still in this pool. I think the best team out of everyone here. But like I was saying, Panama could be one of those teams that they could present some problems because you can get to the back end of that bullpen, and that night they're just going to push all the chips to the table and they're going to win the game, and then that can make things very difficult. And then their hitters, Miguel Amaya, catcher. Obviously, he's becoming a really, really good catcher for the Cubs. He's gotten better every year since he's been up. And then Jose Caballero for the Yankees. He's probably going to be their starting shortstop, since Volpe is hurt, and he's got a ton of playing time with the Yankees and the Rays. And then Edmundo Sosa. He can play, obviously. Plays a ton of different positions. He can hit. Not the most consistent, but in a format, in a tournament like this, you don't need to be, you don't need to be fully locked in for a whole season. That's the ups and downs. You're playing this for 2 weeks, so you got to give it your all for 2 weeks. And either guys are not going to hit at all, or they're going to be studs. So that's to be seen. And then Puerto Rico, their key pitchers. I got Seth Lugo. He was on them last time. He was their ace last time Puerto Rico was in this WBC 2023. And then Fernando Cruz, really good, obviously. And then he's probably going to be setting up Edwin Diaz. So those two at the back end, their pitching's not deepest, but they do have good pitching. There's a few different guys I had to pick from there, but that's a few to note. They do have better pitching. They're more of a bullpen team as well. So I don't know what they're going to do. Their pitching plan is going to be. And then key hitters, Nolan Arenado, who was on Team USA last time, he'll play for them. I think a spot opened up for him when, Correa and Lindor couldn't play for them. So Arenado took his chance there and said, you know what, I want more playing time. Probably not going to play for Team USA. And why not let me get my chance there? Then Willie Castro, he's another guy, switch hitter, very good defensively. He can hit as well. And then Christian Vasquez, their lineup is not obviously what they usually are. That's why I got to the point where I'm like, all right, Christian Vasquez is probably going to be one of their most important bats, who may not be their starting catcher, but he probably could be getting DH and first base opportunities, with the lineup that's not as deep as it usually is. Well, I'll give my predictions after, but Puerto Rico is that team to watch, even though they're not at 100%. They're still the team to watch in the pool. Then Pool B, so Brazil, I have nothing on them. The only guy that I actually knew was Dante Bichette Jr., which is Bo Bichette. Obviously the Mets, his brother, and obviously the son of Dante Bichette. Wasn't familiar with anyone else on that roster, and they are the least. They have the longest odds, so they're the least favorite to win this whole thing. Then Great Britain, key pitchers, they have Tristan Beck, reliever of the Giants, Vance Worthy, who he's not really in a guy that's considered anything, but he pitched for them last time. He's going to get out there and throw. I don't know what Vance Worthy we're going to get. Last time wasn't that impressive, but he is a key pitcher for them because he is going to throw. And then Gary Gilhill is actually a guy that my high school faced when he was in high school, so we're the same age, and he was drafted by the Rays. He's become a nice prospect for them. He should be up, if not this year, next year. He's been taking the long route, but he's good. He can throw, and I think that he'll get some time here, and he's going to be able to show what he's got. So we'll see what happens with him. And then key hitters, obviously, Jazz Chisholm is their best hitter, and I think he's going to show it. Obviously, there's nothing to really, dive into Jazz Chisholm. We know how good he is. Nate Eaton from the Red Sox, he played briefly for them last year. He can swing it. He's a prospect, more of on the younger side, so we don't know what type of Nate Eaton we're going to get, but he is good. And Trace Thompson, a guy that's played for a number of different organizations in baseball, obviously brother of Klay Thompson as well. Great Britain's not a deep roster, but they do have some talent here. I'm not going to say they have no chance. And, based off the next three teams, Great Britain could probably beat Brazil and maybe come away with out of this thing with at least one win, out of this tournament. Then Italy, Aaron Nola, key pitcher for them. Obviously, he's notable. Greg Weissert, reliever, and Ron Marinaccio, another reliever. They also have Matt Festa. They have a few other, good bullpen arms. That's another team. I see the trend here. A lot of these countries are loaded in the bullpen, a little short on the starting pitching because, these starting pitchers, especially the guys that are in the MLB, they don't want to push themselves too early and then risk getting injured. Bullpen guys, yeah, that's fine. I'm going to throw my inning or two that I would throw in spring training, just a little higher intensity, nothing wrong with that. That's why I understand, excuse me, but the starters aren't really too interested here. But good for Italy. They got some good pitching there. And then the hitters, Vinny Pasquantino and Jack Haglione from the Royals. Obviously, those guys are going to swing it. Lefties as well. And then Dominic Canzone from the Mariners. So they got three guys right there. They have a few more. I know Kyle Teal is going to catch. I don't know how much, he's going to hit, but he'll catch for them. So they got some good players there. Italy is a dark horse. I think they can actually make some noise here. And, based off the last two teams, Great Britain and Brazil, Italy should be winning those two games. I don't think they should have a problem with those two teams. And then when you're playing Mexico and the U.S., you win one of those, that's going to be the difference if you're going to, move on to the next round or not. That's what I think the big thing is for Italy here. If they can come away with a third win, they're going to move on. I think it's that simple here. And then for Mexico, the next team here, key pitchers, Mexico is very underrated. I think they're, I said Italy's a dark horse. I think Mexico, very sneaky talented that no one's talking about right now. They have key pitchers, Andres Munoz, closer from the Mariners, electric. Taiwan Walker is probably going to be their ace, I would say. Once again, another team with a really good bullpen. And Brennan Bernardino from the Red Sox, who's a really good left-handed reliever. So they have two really good relievers here. Some other pitchers as well. They're more of a hitting team though. So I don't know what that in this tournament. Honestly, I think if you just have talent, you're gonna obviously you can weed out the teams that aren't talented, and those teams are gonna obviously drop and fall out of it. But if you can hit, it's going to help. And Alejandro Kirk, obviously catcher of the Blue Jays, Jaron Duran, outfielder from the Red Sox, and Randy Arozarena as well. So those three guys are going to lead that lineup. But they have some others that can swing it as well. So I think Mexico's going to be a hitting team first. And, you look at it like I was saying, Great Britain and Brazil, 2-0 for Mexico. They're not losing those games. And then the last two is going to be Italy and the USA. So I don't think I personally don't think anyone's beating the US. But Mexico and Italy is going to probably be that game when they play each other. It's probably going to be for whenever that is. That could be the first game. I'm not exactly sure. I haven't looked at the schedule. But whenever they do play each other, that's probably going to be for second place in Pool B, if I had to guess. And then the U.S., of course, key players. The entire team is loaded. But the starting pitching is going to be led by Skeens and Skubal. We know Skeens will give us 2 starts, so he'll start game 1 and probably the quarterfinal game. And then Skubal will start game 2, and that's it. And then the rest of the starting rotation is, they have nothing set in stone yet. They have pieces there. Logan Webb is probably going to get game 3. That's against Mexico's stiffest competition in the pool, in my opinion. So he's got to be locked in for that. But, I think that they're going to be fine. They just need to get the rest of the pieces, figure out the rest of the pieces here because they have them. They just have to, figure out the puzzle pieces and who's going to go where. And then Mason Miller is the other pitcher. You get a lead to Mason Miller at the end of the game. He's going to shut the door for you. And there's plenty of other relievers we got, but he's the main, he's going to be the guy. And then the key hitters, obviously Judge, Raleigh, Cal Raleigh, and Kyle Schwarber. Bryce Harper is also another guy that's going to be, swinging it. Bregman. We got guys. Will Smith is the backup catcher who very easily can be in the starting lineup. The only thing that scares me is the outfield depth. I'm not too sold on the outfield. 100%, but we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, the U.S. Favorite in the pool, in my opinion. I'll give my other team that I think is going to make it with them. But if it's something to keep an eye on in Pool B, Italy versus Mexico for second place, whenever that is. So whoever wins that game probably going to move on to the playoff round. Then Pool C, Australia. I have nothing on them. I think they're one of those teams that are very low and they don't really have a chance, to be honest with you. Like I said, Pool C, least familiarity with these teams. Nothing really at all. Chinese Taipei, I think they're going to be okay. I just don't know how far how much depth they have and who exactly they have, because these are guys from that country, which I don't know who exactly they have there. Then Stuart Fairchild is a hitter on their team. I think he's gonna he'll hit for them. He's been okay with the Reds in his career, nothing crazy, but he'll do fine. Czechia, nothing on them as well. So Australia and them, probably whoever when they play each other, that'll probably be their only win of the tournament, I think. And Japan, we know Japan, the defending champs, so they should run through this pool pretty well. Yoshiniba Yamamoto, Tomoyuki Sagano from the Orioles, and then Yoshi Kikuchi from the Angels and Mariners, all those different teams he's pitched for, along in his career. So those three are going to headline it for Japan, just because their first key hitter, Shohei Ohtani, he's not going to be pitching, at least in the beginning. If they get to a later part of this tournament where they think they can bring him, like last time he pitched, close the game out against the U.S., Ohtani may do that, but he's not going to be a guy that's penciled in for any starts or anything like that. I think it'll be more of necessity if they think they really need him to pitch. They're going to give their guys a shot, and if they don't get it done, then obviously they'll go in a different direction. Then Seiya Suzuki and Masataka Yoshida. I know the two new comers that Murakami and the other guy Okamoto. Those two guys are also on the lineup, so that's 5 guys in that lineup. I didn't include them just yet because they haven't really done anything in the MLB, but they're going to hit. So those 5 guys alone, with the rest of the lineup, I'm sure they're going to have the next up-and-coming Japanese, superstar getting in the middle of that as well. So they're going to be fine. And then Korea, they're Dane Dunning and Hyunjin Ryu. So 2 guys that really haven't pitched that much recently, but they're going to headline for Korea. And then their hitters, Jung Ho Lee from the Giants and Jahmai Jones, who's moved around with Yankees, Tigers, played for a few teams. He's like in the MLB, he's a nice 4th, 5th outfielder for Korea. He's going to play, for the most part. So for Pool C, totally eliminate Australia and Czechia. Japan should win it. Obviously, if they don't, there's something probably went wrong there. And then Korea and Taipei, 2nd and 3rd. I think Korea is better off there, but I wouldn't count out Taipei just because they're a little bit of an unknown in this tournament. And then Pool D, Dominican Republic, in my opinion, the most complete team besides the U.S. In the tournament. Christopher Sanchez, up and coming ace from the Phillies. Sandy Alcantara, he wasn't the greatest last year, but he was much better at the back end of the year. And then Brian Bayo, really intriguing young piece there. So they got starting pitching, and they also have relieving, but they got relief pitching as well. They got a pen. So I just wanted to highlight the starters just because, like I said before, a lot of these teams don't have starting pitching. And I think that highlighting these guys, showing they have the horses to get deep in, I know there's pitch counts, but they have the horses to get deep into games. And then when you get to their bullpen, it can make things even more difficult. But they are definitely led by the starting pitching, Sanchez, Alcantara, and Brian Bayo. Then their key hitters, their lineup is sick, obviously 1 through 9, but Soto, Tatis, and Vlad Jr. Machado is another guy in there. Austin Wells, I know, is on the squad. Rodriguez from the Mariners. So they got guys. They have players. But those 3, Soto, Tatis, and Vlad Jr., or the cream of the crop, for the Dominicans there. And like I said, I think they're the most complete team in the entire tournament. But most complete doesn't mean that these guys are going to perform. Obviously, we know that. Then the next team, Israel, Tommy Kingley, Dean Kramer, and Matt Bowman. So 2 relievers and a starter for Israel. Harrison Bader is a key hitter for them. Garrett Stubbs, the catcher, and Matt Mervis from the Royals. So, they got some pieces there. I don't think they're going to do much damage, but I don't think they're going to be, terrible where we're like, oh, man, what the hell are we watching here? But they are in a very, very tough pool. I think Pool D can be the most competitive pool, out of all these that we've talked about so far. And obviously, this is the last one, so you know what I mean. Netherlands got Kenley Jansen. Did not see any other pitcher I recognize there, so I don't know what they're going to be able to do to get to Jansen to close the games out, but we'll see. And then their hitters, though, they do have some good hitters. Ozzy Albies, Xander Bogaerts, and Jurickson Profar. They have some other guys as well, but those 3 guys will hit, and they're going to play great defense as well. Then Nicaragua, not familiar with a ton of their guys, none of their pitchers. And then key hitters, Vientos and Jeter Downs. I know Jeter Downs was someone that's been a highly touted prospect hasn't lived up to it. But when sometimes when you play for your country, you can elevate. So I think that Vientos is going to be their guy, hopefully for them, if they want to have any success, and then Jeter Downs. And then Venezuela, they're a sneaky team as well. Them and Mexico, very, very sneaky teams. Ranger Suarez, another great pitcher from the Phillies. Daniel Palencia from the Cubs. We know what he did last year. He was great out of the bullpen. And then Jose Budo. I think Jose Budo is going to be a guy that's going to be counted on for them. They have some other good pitching, but I think he can be one of those guys that they're really going to count on. And then their lineup, they got William Contreras and Wilson Contreras, but William Contreras is obviously at this stage better than his brother, Ronald Acuna Jr. and Jackson Chourio. They have other pieces as well, but they have a good lineup. That's what I'm saying. Venezuela deep, very, very deep team in a tournament like this. You have a deep roster that's going to help a lot, and I think that's going to be, the key for them. But an overall view here, it's definitely Dominican Republic. They're going to be leading the charge here. I would say Venezuela and Netherlands are kind of that 2-3 range, and then Israel and Nicaragua will be at the bottom. Not sure who will finish in last, but that's why I think that's going to work out. And obviously, we just cut through the key players of each team and what the pools look like themselves. So from Pool A, I'm going to go with Puerto Rico going to finish in first and Canada in second. Wouldn't be shocked if Canada does give Puerto Rico a run for their money, though, just because Puerto Rico is not as deep. But I think their headliners are better than what the rest of this pool is presenting, like Colombia, Cuba, and Panama. Panama, yeah, they have some MLB guys, but nothing crazy. Cuba, not really anything. And then Colombia, I don't think they're that deep of a team. I don't think they have much talent. They have guys that played in the MLB, guys that aren't actively, not many active guys. So I think Puerto Rico and Canada will emerge from Pool A. Then Pool B, obviously, the USA, they have the best roster, just I think from start to finish. In the entire tournament. So they're going to finish in first. And when you're playing Brazil and Great Britain, those are two easy wins. Mexico will probably give them the most competition, but they shouldn't lose to them. And same thing with Italy. Get some competition as you get into your playoff round, because you play Mexico and Italy in the last two games. Play those two teams, and that should give you some nice competition. But should be 4-0. Got to move on to the next the next round there. And then I think Mexico is going to join them. I really like Mexico. I also really like Italy. I'm rooting for them, obviously. But I think Mexico is just a little more loaded, especially that lineup is scary. And I don't know if Italy's going to be able to keep up with the amount of runs that Mexico can score. But I wouldn't be shocked if Italy actually beat them. I would not be shocked by that. But official picks, though, U.S. and Mexico are going to move on from Pool B. Pool C, I think it's Japan to lose. I think they're going to go 4-0. And honestly, they might give up less than 8 runs in this entire first 4 games. I think they're going to be dominant. And, I think Korea is going to join them. I don't really know who else. I don't really have much faith. Just like I said, Taipei, they're an unknown to me. I don't really have much on them. So I don't know. Maybe they do beat out Korea. But Czechia and Australia, I've given no shot to. They're kind of like the Great Britain and Brazil of Pool B. But yeah, Japan and Korea will move on from there. Then Pool D, like I said, probably the most competitive here. Dominican Republic will finish in first, and I think Venezuela is going to join them because they got, like I said, a lot of depth. And then Netherlands, and Nicaragua, and Italy. Israel, I don't know if those 3 teams can keep up with what the Dominicans and Venezuela are going to throw at them. So Pool A, Puerto Rico and Canada. Pool B, USA and Mexico. Pool C, Japan and Korea. And then Dominican Republic and Venezuela from Pool D. So then it would be, like I said before, the format would be second place from Pool A. So Canada would play USA. USA is going to win that one. And then Mexico versus Puerto Rico. I actually think Mexico is going to beat Puerto Rico. May not be that much of an upset because I think Mexico actually has a better roster than Puerto Rico does right now. But Puerto Rico being the first place team, that could be a little bit of an upset. But I think the U.S. and Mexico will actually have a rematch later on. Obviously, they won those two. I'm going to get to Pool C and Pool D situation here. But U.S. versus Mexico would be the semifinal from the Pool A, Pool B. But it would be 2 teams from Pool B who already played each other. Then in Pool C, Pool D here, you got second place Korea playing the Dominican Republic. I think the Dominican Republic will move on very easily. And then Venezuela, second place team from Pool D, will play Japan. I think this is where Venezuela gets slowed down a little bit. Japan's going to throw out a ton of good pitching. I think Japan's going to move on. Very close, I think. Very close game, but Japan will move on. Then we have the USA versus Mexico and Dominican Republic versus Japan. I think this time, USA, not this time, but you know what I mean. This time, in the sense of who they're going to play, it's going to be a little different. USA will beat Mexico and go on to the finals. And then Dominican Republic versus Japan, heavyweight matchup, let me tell you. But I think the Dominicans, man, there's something about them this year. I think that they're all in and they're all ready to go. and they're gonna get this one, and they're gonna get to the championship game. And then USA versus the Dominican Republic. I think the USA will take home gold this time, or the championship, whatever they want to call it, the WBC championship. And the USA will win, and they will get revenge, not on Japan, just because Japan will be eliminated, but they will be able to, overcome what happened last time, and they're going to be the winners of this thing. And yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be very competitive. We're going to see the drop off, though. I think we're going to see, these 8 teams that make it, and a few others, 10 to maybe 12, and then I think there's some other teams we're going to look at and be like, yeah, these teams are not very good, but it's going to be very competitive, and I think the United States will come out on top, and that's why I wanted to do this. Come on, episode 101 here, just to do a little WBC preview. I hope everyone watches that when they have the chance. Obviously, you guys will see this later on in the day when it is posted. But in terms of the rest of the show, so tomorrow night we will have episode 102 with Biggie. We're just it won't be that long. We'll just do the normal recap of the week of sports. Nothing crazy. We'll talk some combine stuff. I want to get Biggie's thoughts on the combine, so we're gonna get him to really dive deep on each position, what he liked, what he didn't like, maybe what positions are deeper than others. And then we got 103 on Wednesday. So we got 3 days in a row of this. Knicks versus Thunder live stream. We'll have Dom, Jet Specialist Ryan, possibly, just depending on what his schedule looks like. Corey will be back. CT is up in the air, but I'm sure he'll be in. Biggie will be popping in and out. Comments we got like the usual. And then next week will be episode 104, which will be Monday night US versus Mexico. Probably going to be 2 teams that are 2-0. So that's why I wanted to do it. And also, you don't have the Skis and Scooble, guys penciled in as the pitchers. So that's that's when this thing gets very interesting. And then Tuesday night, which would be episode 104, will be JD, myself, obviously, and Biggie back for another JD with Biggie episode recap and everything that's gone on as well. But that's going to do it for episode 101. I want to thank everyone for watching, supporting the show, going out on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, whatever, with Twitter now. Obviously, we got the Twitter up and running, just supporting the show. It is much appreciated from everyone. But I'll see you guys tomorrow night.